The story of Noah and his ark is one of the Bible's best known and best loved. So we came here to the Netherlands, crisscrossed by canals and sitting below sea level, where people live under the constant threat of flooding. We had heard that a kind of modern-day Noah had done something extraordinary.
Thanks for having us to your ark.
It's amazing.
To be frank, I never thought I'd say that to anybody.
He built himself his own biblical ark.
So that was a rooster?
It was a rooster, yeah.
So what animals have you got in your ark?
Plastic animals.
Plastic animals. Not quite like Noah.
Yeah, no. He had the real animals.
In fact, it was a real flood that inspired Johann Wiebers, a born-again Christian, to build this ark. He nearly drowned in a storm surge in 1992, and the next day, a book caught his eye among the wreckage.
It was a big book, the Ark of Noah. I bought it, and we are looking at the book, and I said, oh wow, I'm gonna build the Ark of Noah. My children were so excited, and they ran to my wife.
What did your wife say?
Oh, she was not happy with it.
No, women are sensible.
Yeah. It took 13 years to get permission.
It took you 13 years to convince her?
Exactly.
You must have really believed in this.
For 100%.
It took Johann just over 4 years to build his ark, and he even used the Bible as a blueprint.
300 elbow is the length, 50 elbow is the width, and 30 elbow is the height.
When you say elbow...
Yeah, it's from here till the top of your fingers.
The cubit.
The cubit, yeah. I took my cubit because nobody knows how big Noah was at that time.
According to the Bible, Noah spent 120 years on his ark. And it's every child's favorite story. And when the flood finally did come, he was ready.
God sends 2 of every animal, all of them, 2 of every single one, came onto a ship. From the giraffes to the small little ants and the bears. It rained for 40 days and 40 nights. And finally, the whole entire earth was flooded.
Adam Scharf is 17 years old, and as fantastic as the Noah story sounds, even tonight, not far from Adam's home in New York, people are still trying to cope with the aftermath of Hurricane Sandy. And it seems that whether it was just 7 weeks ago in the United States or 7,000 years ago, when a wave washes away the home that you've built, the children and the community you love, the first question we all ask is why?
Life often seems inexplicable, and we need to make sense of it. We need something that will help you to assuage your grief and anguish and rage. These biblical stories are a way of finding meaning.
When I was younger, this story was kind of a fairy tale for me. I think that when you get older, you kind of see the sadness and the kind of the sorrow in the story, because lots of people die in this flood.
Destroying the earth, the Bible tells us, is the only thing God ever regrets. So he sends a rainbow as a promise.
This rainbow shows that God will never send a flood again to hurt humanity and all the animals that live on this earth.
What happens next is left out of the colorful pages of storybooks.
Noah comes out of the ark and he plants a vineyard and gets drunk. I was remembering a story of a Holocaust survivor who went home to his village and found everyone had gone. He said, I could understand exactly why Noah got drunk. If you imagine what it would have been like after the flood, devastation, all these swollen, bloated bodies lying around, terrible.
And it turns out that flood stories like this are not unique to the Bible. They can be found all over the ancient world.
These stories didn't drop from heaven one day in a clump of words, all sent by God in book form. These stories developed in a certain place and time,
leading some archaeologists to believe they're based on real events.
People do not make these things up. So does this mean that we've got a flood way back in antiquity? It may well. A story is created to explain something that happened.
But in the biblical account, the story is layered with new meaning. The flood is sent as a punishment for people's sins.
Hurricane Katrina was the judgment of God.
I don't know how much God has to do. We've had an earthquake, we've had a hurricane. He said, are you going to start listening to me here?
You know that even today, some Christians will say that the tsunamis and the floods are retribution from God for sins that are being committed today.
Some Christians say that. I don't know on what basis they would say it.
On the Noah basis.
In the fallen world, sometimes God just allows things to happen. It doesn't mean that he is judging people.
But Johann isn't so sure.
Do you believe he'll do it again?
Worldwide, not anymore, but small ones, yes.
So small places might be wiped away.
Like New York, it's not a small place.
No, it's not.
It was a big disaster at that time.
Does that frighten you?
Yeah. But I'm also that the promise of God that it is in his hands.
I feel like the moral of this story, for me, helping others will make the world a better place. And a better place for myself will be a better place for everyone, and for my children, and for my children's children. And that's the kind of world that I want to live in. And that's the kind of world that Noah tells us about.